So if you're the type of person who's been trying to achieve something, you've been so focused on getting to a certain goal. It could be personally with your health, it could be with your relationships, it could be with your finances. And for some reason you just haven't gotten there yet. You just been like waiting for it to happen. Maybe you see other people who've done it. Maybe you've seen these videos of other people doing it, and you really believe it's true. It's not like you don't really believe it's true. Like, like there are those people who are scams and fakes, but you really know that you have the ability to achieve a certain type of lifestyle, achieve a certain type of success. Whether it's because you see other people who are more sincere and authentic with achieving something like that, or because just for your own ability, like that it's really possible to live a certain type of lifestyle. And we need to ask ourselves a specific question. Like, what are we supposed to do to keep going? Because that resilience of moving forward, of taking action consistently, and maybe it's not day in and day out, but it's the consistent action of not giving up and never stopping is going to be the thing that's going to allow us to achieve that success. And so many people they don't have that energy. They're just so burnt out. They don't have that, that strength to keep going. And I want this episode to be a little bit of a hug. So if you are feeling a little defeated, if you are feeling that, what, I just don't know, like you start second guessing yourself and questioning the reality of the possibility. I love talking about this idea of creating the life that we want. And life is like, it's confusing. Like it's really confusing. And there's so many different factors that are going on and so many different things that are happening in our personal lives and the world at large. And we're so pulled every which way. And we can start to say to ourselves, regardless of what's going to happen, regardless of what is going to happen in 5 years or 10 years and 20 years, what are the things that I can start doing today to allow myself to see the success that I want? Whatever that means and whenever that means. So whether it's success currently right now, or whether it's going to be success in 20 years from now, when everything's going to be changed, all the variables are going to change, your positioning in life is going to be different. And if we can start to recognize that, that can start to be a shift. Because so many people are so focused on what it is that they want today that they don't realize that in a year from now, like, things might be very different. Your goals might be very different. Something that was maybe really important for you is like, it's really not such a big deal. And maybe that happened because you were trying and you realized, maybe it's just not worth it. Maybe you realized because something happened to you. Maybe something happened, to your community, or something happened that really just started to shift your perspective just a little bit. And I think it's really important for us to start to recognize, to start to understand, what is it that we can start to do? How is it that we can start to have that energy to continue to move forward, regardless of even if we have clarity on that path, regardless of whether we know which direction to go. But we do know that we want to be moving forward. And once we could start to recognize these ideas, once we could start to move forward and realize, hey, you know what? Regardless of the way I'm feeling, I still need to take the action. Of course, we want to be coming with level 10 energy. Of course, we want to be so excited every single day. But if we can start to move forward and start to recognize, hey, you know what? There's something over here. You know what? I'm not doing it for anybody else but myself. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll even bring in some other people that I'm going to do it for. I'm doing it for my family. Growing up, I was not, privileged to certain experiences. And I don't want that for my family. Or you know what? Maybe there's somebody who's been always telling me off. Maybe a sibling, a parent, maybe a friend, or somebody just in your own community that you see all the time. And you know what? I'm going to do it in spite of that person. And I think on the one hand, some people say like, well, you shouldn't be like so negative, and you shouldn't be like using your energy negatively towards other people. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes we need to use what we got. And if we have something that's going to inspire us, if we're going to have that quote unquote enemy that's going to be able to push us forward to really take that action, at least in the beginning, I think that's a great way to start. Because so many times we talk ourselves out of it. And what we have to recognize and realize is that regardless of what's going on, we have to continue to move forward. We have to take that action to really start to see, hey, you know what? What is it that I need to be doing? How is it that I can start to reframe? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Is like, how can we start to reframe the experiences that we've been going through? Because regardless of what we're in pursuit of, sometimes there's some hopelessness. Sometimes there's just like confusion. There's uncertainty. And I think if we can start to say, hey, I know that's part of the journey. I understand that this is what's helping me become the person that I need to become. Then all of a sudden you start to approach it a little differently. It doesn't suck as much energy out of you. And that is something that we want to be doing. And I think, I love talking about failure, and really failure is just feedback, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. But I really, the question is like, what is failure then? Is if when you mess up on something, it's just feedback and you're just getting more data, more information. So what's failure? So I think failure is like when you give up. Because if you have a specific goal in mind, if you stay in pursuit of it, you're going to hit it. It might not take a year like you expected. It might take 20 years. But if you stay in pursuit of it, it's going to happen. And I think the only definition or really way that somebody could really fail is if they stop. Doesn't mean they can't take a break. I'm saying stop and like just give up. Like give up on something that they know is possible. Give up on something that they know, you know what, I could be living a different type of lifestyle, a better lifestyle. And that doesn't necessarily mean financially. I mean, I could have better relationships, but I'm just done with them. I'm not going to get creative anymore. And I think if we start to do that, that is when we start to fail. And we're not here to judge anybody. And if you're in a position like that, or if you've been in a position like that, doesn't mean your journey's over. It doesn't mean you can't jump back on. But to understand for ourselves, and this is what we're judging ourselves right now. The only person you could judge is the person we were yesterday. And we're not here to point fingers or to blame anybody. But we have to understand that if we start pointing the finger at ourselves, then all of a sudden we can start to do certain things. And I think that is something that's so powerful. And we have to take it by the horn, and we have to try to figure out what is it that we're doing? How is it that we're working? Because so many times we beat ourselves up so much. Sometimes it's not even the experience or the situations that we're in and the quote unquote failures or the feedback that we get, but it's more that we ourselves are beating ourselves up. And that is something that is not allowed and is not appropriate. And I think if we could start to see that action, if we could start to stay with it, then all of a sudden we can start to see the success. Because success is really on the other side of perseverance. I was recently thinking there's somebody who came out of the blue and started like blowing up on social media. And I was like a little jealous. I'm like, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to like grow my YouTube channel. And all of a sudden he has like a lot more people all of a sudden, like overnight. And he's doing X, Y, and Z and this and that. And on the one hand, I'm like, you know what? That's really annoying. And then I'm trying to think on the other hand, I'm like, first of all, that's not going to serve me. That idea, that thought. And what I have to realize is that by me going through this process, even if it's slower, I'm building certain muscles. I'm building certain opportunities for myself where I know I'm going to constantly get better. Like who knows, maybe this person was building their muscle off of social media and then all of a sudden they just applied it and then all of a sudden they blew up. And I think that's something that's really, really important for us to really start to understand, hey, you know what? What is it that we can start to do? What is it that we need to be doing to allow ourselves to start to see that success? And I think if we could start to realize that, if we could start to say, hey, you know what? How can I frame this differently? How can I not worry about what other people think or what other people are saying? How can I just focus on what I need to do? Because the work needs to get done. We need to do the work. And once the work gets done, then we start to see that success. And if we're not seeing the success after the work, is that we need to understand, okay, we have to get curious over here. And that's the first shift we're going to have to make. Let's get curious over here. Because if you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing and you're not seeing the success, you're probably not doing the things you're supposed to be doing. You probably have to do it a little bit differently. There's this idea, and I'll give you another social media example where they say, as long as you just post like 10 pieces of content a day, then like you're going to be great. I think that could work to an extent. But you have to also understand that if your quality of your videos are not great, then nobody's going to listen to them. If it's garbage stuff, nobody's going to listen to you. And I started doing that at first. I'm like, oh, let me just post content. And then I was like, you know what? Content is not as depth. It doesn't have so much depth to it. It's not as rich as I would like it to be. And then I understood, you know what? I need to change that. And I need to give it a little bit more thought. It's not just doing the process. It's how can I tweak this to make it better? Something that I do with my YouTube channel is like, how can I make every video 1% better? What can I do differently than I didn't do last time? How can I just smile a little bit more in camera? How can I be a little bit more clear? Talk about clear, right? How can I start to pause a little bit more to make a bigger effect in terms of what I'm saying? And I think if we start to understand that, then all of a sudden we start to get better. So if you're trying to build a real estate empire and you just, I don't know where to buy my first property, or I bought like my first 3 and like I lost all my money so far. What am I supposed to do? And the question is like, what are you doing that you need to be doing? And I think so many people don't ask themselves that question and get curious about it. We're not getting judged about it. So many people think when it comes to certain successes that they should be successful already. It's like, oh, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and I should be making lots of money right away. And it's like, well, do you know everything about marketing, sales, the product, client, keeping clients on to make them happy? Like, do you know all that process? And if you've never done it before, like you have no idea what you're doing. Then it makes so much sense that you're not successful. And it's not even not successful. It's just like delusional a little bit. And I think that's fine, by the way. I think that's totally fine. I think our expectations should shift to say, hey, you know what? I thought I knew what I thought I knew. Didn't know what I didn't know. Now all of a sudden I need to start to shift. What do I need to get better at? And I think once we start to understand that, once we start to get curious, then all of a sudden we start to move into it. We start to step into that. And I think that is something that's so important. And one of the things that I recently started this productivity roadmap. So that you can take a look wherever you are. It's down below. It's a free PDF and video series that you can watch. And the idea of it is to really just help people get set up on their goals. Really put a framework to understand what's really possible. And I think if we could start to do that, I think that could be something that could be really, really such a switch. Because sometimes people are taking the action, they're just not seeing the success. We need to get curious about it. Okay, what is that we need to shift? I think another thing is, and I spoke about this earlier, is that we have to start to understand that when things are hard for us, all it really means is that we're growing. And if we could shift that frame to understand, hey, you know what, things are really tough right now, but it's not about the toughness; it's about me growing in the moment. Is because I wasn't the type of person who was able to handle X, Y, and Z. Now all of a sudden I can. That is something that could be really powerful. And it's when you go through those difficult moments, those times when things are just look so bleak and so dark and so scary. And we could start to say to ourselves, hey, you know what? I'm growing right now. This is the moment where I'm becoming somebody. Jim Rohn, and I love quoting it, always talks about the idea where it's not what you get in life, it's who you become. And through these experiences, through the ideas about knowing what it is you're doing or not doing, that's who you become. That's when you become somebody. And you're going to look back and say, hey, you know what? During that time, it was a rough time for X, Y, and Z. But you know what? I really was able to grow in that moment. And that is something that is so powerful. And as long as we keep going, we keep growing and we keep growing, we're going to reach the things that we want to be able to reach. And I think it's so powerful. I was recently speaking to a student of mine who's in the next gen program, and he had this like business idea that he really wanted to start. And he was thinking about how he's going to start in a year or two, this and that. And I was like, why are we waiting? And we ended up like really, it was like really quick. He ended up just starting a WhatsApp group just to like beta test what's going on. There's over 70 people in the group already. People are already sort of using the idea, the app that he has in mind. And it was so exciting. And he texted me, his mom texted me like they're so happy and is so excited about, the action and the stuff that's going on. And I spoke to him this week and he was like freaking out. He's like, oh man, like it's not going as quick as I want. Like, let's start to reframe this a little bit. I said, if you would have seen that success and you would have blown up overnight, the amount of learning curves you would have missed over the long run would have only been detrimental to you later on. The fact that we were going through something and the fact that we had some success, which is nice, first of all, just to prove the point, and then all of a sudden we get a little lost. We get a little confused. How can I continue to grow this thing? Why is nobody using the app as much towards the end of the week? Then all of a sudden what could happen is we could start to shift it just a little bit to allow ourselves to take that action to move forward. And I think that is something that's so powerful. Because if we can start to reframe it saying, hey, it's not that I'm failing, it's actually I'm growing here. And by me growing, what ends up happening is that I'm able to learn how to take it to the next level. And if I could become the person who can take it to the next level, whether it's this specific idea or another idea, I have the muscles that I can do that. And I think especially with like AI and all this stuff right now, it's really the muscles are important. Because you think you're very good at video editing and recognizing, hey, you know what? In 6 months from now, you might not need a video editor. But what is the muscle that you need in order to become successful? And I think it's so powerful, and so many people don't realize that. How can I become a patient person with my business? Because that's only going to help me in my relationships. And once we start to realize that, and once we start to play that game, then we're playing a different level. I think another thing we need to understand to really just get us more excited to really move forward is understand why we're doing this specific thing. So many people don't realize it. Or they lose sight, I would say, on what it is that they're doing or what is that they're not doing. And if we start to say to ourselves, hey, you know what? All I really need to do is I really need to be able to move forward and take that action and to understand why it is I'm doing the thing that I'm doing. That can really center us in order to allow ourselves to see what it is that we want to be saying, to bring that emotion back into it, especially if we can attach it to somebody else. If you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for your kid, your spouse, or whatever it is. That could be a really, really powerful motivator to get us to start taking action, even when we're not in the mood. And action usually breeds action, and you are able to take more action after you just get started. And it's so tough because once you get beat up, once you get exhausted, I know the feeling. If you're other, I know the feeling. And to get ourselves to pull back is really something that could be so tough. So if you could do it for somebody else, that could be a really big impetus to allow yourself to move forward. And understand, you know what? Sometimes the story is going to be a great story. Who knows what's going to happen at the end? Who knows if you're going to see the success or not? Regardless, though, the journey is what you're going to look back on. Even if you see the success, you could see the success and you could lose the success. Understanding that it's the journey, who you're becoming. Let's start to get curious and get that feedback. Now you might say, Bennett, well, maybe just not a good idea. Maybe just really not, I can't be successful. And the question is, how are you defining that? Who are you allowing to define that? Are you doing that yourself? Because a lot of times we're very good at tricking ourselves. We're very good at telling ourselves we can't be doing something, but really we can be. Maybe we could be trying a little harder. We could get a little bit more creative in terms of how to make this thing happen. And I think once we could start to understand that, once we have that ability, I think that could shift. That's one of the biggest reasons why I'm a big believer in coaching, because a coach can call you out on your stuff. A coach will help you get through it. A coach will understand what is really holding you back. Is it the reality, or is it your own mindset? Is it your own fears that are holding you back? And that is something that could be so powerful when it comes to the success that we want. So ask yourself, the thing that you're doing, why are you doing it? Why are you so upset that you haven't seen that success yet? Why are you so frustrated and burnt out? What's the expectation that we start to shift? How can we get more curious? How can we just get more feedback and understand, you know what? This isn't anything to do with me as a person. It's not my own self-esteem. I'm growing in the moment. I'm going to the gym. My mind is going to the gym. My resilience in my blood is boiling because it's growing right now. I'm becoming somebody who can actually do this. And I think if we could start to do that, we could really move forward. If you have dreams, if you have certain things in your life that you want to attain, understand that you can't stop. It might take a lot longer. You might need to take a break. You might need to speak to different people. You might need to change your circle of people that you talk to even. But understand, if you keep moving forward, then you're going to see that success. I'm here. This is me giving a hug from me to you. I hope that you continue moving forward. I can't wait to hear all the stories and the amazing work that you're gonna see and do, and the impact you're going to have. And as long as you keep moving forward, I'm telling you, it should not be reasonable that you should not achieve anything that you really want to achieve.